Holt, how are you?
Very well. Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the happy birthday video you sent me in November. It was one of the best birthday presents I ever had. Thank you very much.
Well, it's nothing at all. It was a pleasure. I was happy to do it.
Hi, this is a birthday greeting for Professor Antonio Garcia. My name is Holt McCallany. I'm an actor. I'm one of the stars of the Netflix series Mindhunter. I'm sorry, my Spanish isn't very good, so I'm afraid my message is in English. I understand that you teach a course on the influence of serial killers in film and television. It sounds fascinating. I wish I could take the course. I love Mexico City. I did a film there back in 2006 called Vantage Point, and I fell in love with the place. I hope to come back one day very soon. But in the meantime, happy birthday, Professor Garcia, and many more to come. Gracias.
We are connecting all the people that want to hear the interview. Thank you for the opportunity to have this talk, this chat, and talk about you and your career.
Yeah.
And I was telling the people that you have a very long career in different genres of film and television. You have focused your career, either to say, in science fiction, horror, crime, maybe a little noir films or noir cut films, but you have made comedy like Monster Trucks and other movies. And
I wish I could get that one back, to be honest. there are always a few along the way that you'd love to get back if you could. I'm afraid Monster Trucks is one of those, but
one of those. Well, my nephew loves Monster Trucks.
Okay, well, he must be very young.
Six.
Yeah,
6
that's
years
about
old,
the age. Above 6, and you start to go, what is this movie?
What's this? Yeah. So we were talking about films like Creepshow 2, like Alien 3. I believe that's what your first encounter with David Fincher, right?
That's correct. It was David's first movie.
Okay, and your first movie with David?
It was absolutely, and you know what? I felt very fortunate to get picked for that because Professor Garcia, I didn't really have much of a career at that stage. I was very new, and I didn't really have much of a resume. And the film was shooting in the United Kingdom, and of course, the United Kingdom is known for having many great actors. They have a long tradition dating all the way back to William Shakespeare and before. I mean, they have really, really fine actors in the United Kingdom, and most of the cast was from the UK. You know, great actors like Charles Dance, who was actually played William Randolph Hearst in Mank. You know, David's last. Oh God, wonderful guys like Paul McGann and Brian Glover, and just a trend. So I was really one of only a couple of Americans that David decided to bring all the way to England with him. And because I was so young and so new, for me, it represented a really wonderful opportunity.
You would say it was your break in the film industry?
Well, it was definitely one of them. I would say that when David brought me back to do Fight Club, was really one of those special films that every actor in Hollywood wanted to be in. You have to remember that, Alien 3 did not perform up to expectations. And I think that a large part of the reason for that is because, the studio kind of took it away from David and recut it. It was his first movie, and I guess he didn't have final cut, and they kind of butchered it. And, these things happen. It wouldn't happen to David now. No. But it did then. And I know he must have been very, very disappointed about that. But his next film was a film called Seven. And Seven, with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, is considered a masterpiece. And of course it is a masterpiece. And after that, when the script for Fight Club, was kicking around Hollywood, it was such a unique film, such an unusual, polemic that we who were fortunate enough to have a role in it, we knew that we were a part of something special. And that was, I think, the thing that really kind of got the ball rolling for me in Hollywood.
Perfect. That was my next point. The Fight Club, the mechanic character that you play over there.
Yeah.
And I think it was very demanding physically for the physique you have to have for the part.
There have been other parts, that required more training. I played a professional boxer in a television show for FX called Lights Out. It only lasted one season, but it was a lot of boxing. And when you're playing a boxer and you have to kind of live like one. There really isn't a way to do it except to do all the training. You're in the gym every day and doing the road work and doing the sparring and trying to feel like a fighter. I even took an amateur fight, because I wanted to have that experience. I wanted to be waiting in the locker room and have them my name and get up in the ring with all my friends there and see what I could do, because that's the experience. That's what these guys do professionally, every time out. So I would say that, just like on the scale of, which part required more physical training, that one did. But that didn't have like the same kind of source material, like, Chuck Palahniuk's incredible book, Fight Club.
Yeah.
What a unique writer he is. And of course, David, let's be honest, is one of the finest directors of his generation,
Hands down.
There's no question about it. So that's what makes it more special. It's the source material, and then it's the auteur, who takes that material and crafts his vision from it.
Yeah, I know that you did another movie that is one of my particular favorites in this kind of genre, Jade, with David Caruso and Linda Fiorentino.
That's a really, yes, sir. That was a really interesting experience. You have to remember that Jade was directed by the great William Friedkin, who directed movies like The French Connection,
Indeed.
and The Exorcist,
The Exorcist, right?
Unbelievable movies, and David Caruso, who became a friend. Yes, we don't stay in contact anymore, but he was always and that was again at the very beginning of my career. Was always very gracious. He's really a gentleman. He's very intelligent. And at that moment, everybody thought that David Caruso was going to be like a huge movie star, like George Clooney or somebody. And
Okay.
I mean, he's a different type than George, but people thought that David was going to have a very big career. What happened was, the movie didn't really work. It was written by Joe Esterhaus, who, of course, wrote, was it Fatal Attraction, or what's the one with Sharon Stone where, she crosses her legs and everybody went crazy?
Fatal Attraction. No, Basic Instincts.
Basic Instinct, right?
Basic Instincts.
Although maybe he wrote Fatal Attraction too, did he? No, I don't know. Basic, but anyway, they were kind of rewriting the script as we filmed it. And you're always, and the thing is this, you have the expectation that a film is a living, breathing entity. It isn't fixed. It isn't set in stone until picture is locked and sound is locked and the film is ready, to be distributed and to go out to the theater. So you expect certain changes along the way, but the kinds of changes that we were getting on Shade were these huge, sweeping, suddenly, the bad guy lives, now he dies, now, now it's somebody else who committed the crime. It's like huge, sweeping changes that we couldn't even keep track, and you're getting different colored pages every day, blue pages, green pages, pink pages, golden.
So you see the production assistant coming to you and you throw the script.
I run, God, no more new pages. And then, and the film didn't work. And then, unfortunately, David had made another film with Nicolas Cage, a Hector Babenco film. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Oh God. And that one also tanked. And was it Hector or Robert Schroeder? I mean, so David, he had been on NYP, which was the #1 television show in America.
Yes.
And it had been a success. And David left the show and he went on to do his movie career. And then the two big movies both bombed back to back. And that was kind of it for David's film. And
the executives lost their faith in David Caruso as a film star.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, he went back to television and made Lieutenant CSI Miami.
And I did that show with him. I did one season on the show, and it was in part because I'd been on a film. I had done a film, a kind of a horror ghost story set in World War II, called Below.
Below, the one of the submarine.
Yes, on the submarine, correct. Wow,
yes,
you know my whole career. Thank you. That film was written by a very smart guy whom I really liked, a guy named David Twohy, a film called The Fugitive with Tommy Lee Jones. That was
and Harrison Ford.
And then David directed this one. I was, oh God, what was I? Now I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about Below, and that you made one season of CSI Miami.
Oh, right, yeah. And then I came off of Below, and I and I went on to a film called, the same director brought me back to, and that's always for an actor, of your students who might have an interest in acting, or people watching, our interview that might have an interest for acting. Here's how you know that you did something right. The director brings you back for his next movie.
Yes.
I just finished a movie with Bro in Toronto, a fabulous movie, which I think will probably win multiple Oscars, that stars Bradley Cooper and Nightmare Alley, correct. What an extraordinary film, and what a great experience for me. And I think Guillermo liked me. I think he was happy with my performance, but you know how I'll know? If he brings me back next time. So
Yes, of course.
So anyway, so the director brought me back for his next film, which was called The Chronicles of Riddick. and it
Yeah.
starred Vin Diesel. Up in Canada, and I was a bad guy movie, and and Vin's kind of a good bad guy, bad good guy, whatever. And I was in a stunt rehearsal, and I did something stupid, and I injured my knee. And I had to have ACL surgery, and it took me out for a while. It was quite a long rehabilitation, and so during that time, while I was rehabbing, I got an offer to do CSI Miami with David Caruso. And of course, David Caruso and I had been friends ever since Jade, and, or friendly. And, and I said, well, I had knee surgery, and they said, yeah, but this show, what do you play a police officer, you investigate, it's not really any, you know what I mean? You examine the cadaver. Do you know what I mean? You have a scene with David, and then there's a girl on the show who's going to be like your love interest, and and I thought, well, that sounds nice. I never got to play too many romantic parts because I wasn't like yeah, it is, but it is what it is, right? So anatomy is destiny in Hollywood, I can tell you that. So so I said yes. And I did, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 episodes of the show. And it was great to work with David again. But, between us, I could tell that, it was not as fulfilling an experience as being in those films, with William Friedkin, and you know what I mean? It was, I mean, he did it, and he did a good job, and the show was a hit, and it ran for a long time. But I think David is now retired. I think that, I don't see him anymore in anything that I can think of. Do you?
No. The last part I saw of him, it was Lieutenant Kane in CSI Miami. I think was the role of a lifetime for him. But as you're telling me now, for David, it was like a consolation prize, right? The role in TV?
Yes, I know it's hard to think of it in that way, but I think that's an accurate description, because, one of the interests about our discussion already is, the way that television has changed, even since those. I think I was doing a CSI Miami with David back in 2005, 2006, something like that. Even in 10 or 15 years, now we see great filmmakers attracted to television. People like David Fincher, people like Martin Scorsese. These guys, they want to be in TV. Why is it? Well, because, people's viewing has changed. I mean, yes, obviously we've seen it in the pandemic, but it was happening long before that, right?
Yeah.
Where with the streaming services, and the whole thing. And there's a great screenwriting teacher in Hollywood named Robert McKee. And he's like a screenwriting guru, and all of the young screenwriters and some of the older ones too, they go and they take his seminars, because he's a brilliant guy when it comes to story and structure and character and dialogue. And I went to take his course, and he said a very interesting thing. He said, Tony Soprano is a more complicated character than Hamlet. And I said, we're looking at each other like, why is a more complicated character than Hamlet? It's because, we got 7 years of Tony Soprano. We got to see him in so many different situations with his family, with sisters, with law enforcement, blah, blah, blah. There simply isn't enough room in the movie to explore a character in that much detail. Yes. So if you have a great story and you have really interesting characters, then television can be a very enriching and really exciting experience. However, if you're unhappy on a television show because the writing is not what you would want it to be, or there are other elements of the production that you're not happy, then it can be like a jail sentence. So it really depends. And I think for David, it was more former.
Yeah, it was like doing time, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you have performed with a lot of great actors, but I think that you share some time with Robert De Niro
I
for
did.
Men of Honor in 2000.
I did, yeah.
What was your working with such a sacred cow, the film industry, like De Niro?
Well, look, um, you have to remember, Professor Garcia, that I was a New York actor, right?
Mhm,
And I came of age in the 1980s. And for us, we were great admirers of the 70s school of
yeah,
auteur filmmakers, people like Mr. Scorsese.
of course.
And there were certain actors that had iconic status. Robert De Niro was one of those actors. Al Pacino was one of those actors. Marlon Brando was one of those actors. There were a few guys that were kind of like they were they were like heroes. They were
Yeah,
like role models, and you never really think when you're a young actor that you're going to get to make a movie with De Niro. Do you know what I mean? It's like some kind of like see all of his movies, of course, but and then one day you get the call, and suddenly you're there in the scene with Bob, and it's a good movie, and I'm proud of the movie, and I'm very glad I participated in the movie, and I don't think I had a bad experience, you know what I mean? But I think that, if I'm going to be really honest, we had built Bob up in our
yeah.
to such a great, you know what I mean, extent that he
Mhm.
was almost like a god. I think that, we're all men.
Yeah,
We're all men, we're all actors, and we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And the truth is that probably no one would have been to live up to the legend that we have
yeah,
created in our minds of
yeah,
Mr. Blue.
yeah. The legend is bigger than the man, right?
Look, Mr. De Niro has a career that any actor would covet. I mean, some tremendously, iconic in films like Taxi
Yeah,
Driver and Raging Bull and Mean Streets, and the list goes on and on and on. It's too long. So,
yeah.
I can't, I can't be critical.
Right. You made some television too, and it was focused on the crime genre. You
Yes.
make Law and Order, you make Law and Order SVU. We talk about CSI Miami, Monk, Criminal Minds. I think it was kind of a premonition working in Criminal Minds and then land the role for Mindhunters.
That's a really interesting, idea. I mean, um, as I said a few minutes ago, Professor Garcia, there's nothing more gratifying for an actor than when the director brings you back, you
Yeah.
know, and just before I got on the line with you, I had a call that David is going to do a big commercial for the Super Bowl, and
Oh,
has asked me to lend my voice,
oh,
completely unexpected, you know what I mean? And Mindhunter for me, because remember, in Alien 3, David's first movie, I have a very small part, and
yeah.
in especially in the cut that the studio made, in the
Hmm.
director's cut, I have more to do, but that's another conversation. And then in Fight Club, yeah, I'm one of the guys, kind of, but it's still a kind of a peripheral character. I mean, this is really a two-hander between Edward Norton and Brad Pitt, and of course, extraordinary contribution from her. But for the rest of us, Meatloaf, Jared Leto, myself, we're in very much in supporting parts. Mindhunter was a lead. And it's a very different thing when you're in the lead or one of the two leads, because now you have much more responsibility, you have much more of an opportunity, to make a contribution that has value. And I think that's very much the way that an actor has to think of it. You have to serve the story. You have to help the director to realize his vision. And David gave me that opportunity. So that for me, it was like a kind of graduation. When you start in a small part, then you get a little bigger part, and then you're in one of the leads, and arguably in the second season, you know what I mean, they gave me a chance to function very much sort of as the protagonist. So so this was this was a tremendous thing. These other shows, Law and Order, Criminal Minds, and things like that. Yeah, I've always loved the crime genre. I've always been attracted to it. And I've had success there. So when you have success at something, there's an impetus to continue. But it's not on the same level. It's not on the same level, Professor, in terms of its production, in terms of even what it aspires to be. Network TV, first of all, they work very fast. They don't have a lot of time. They have budgetary constraints. So, they very often do a limited amount of coverage. They don't do, as many takes as, you might prefer. With a filmmaker like David, it's not that he has no budgetary constraints, but it's very different. He has the time and the resources to be able to make a quality product. And you can believe that he's going to stay there until the scene is as good as it can be. And that, even if we have to do hundreds of takes, and when I say hundreds of takes, that's not an exaggeration, because you remember that it's not just the number of takes that you're doing in a particular scene, it's also the number of setups, right? Yeah. So we're wide, and then we're in a two shot, and then we're over here, and then it's an over, French over, then it's close-ups, then it's a high, wide, and it's that there's a lot of setups and a lot of takes from each setup. So it's really, really detailed. And he's not very tolerant of mistakes. You have to really concentrate and really try, to make every take, because you don't know which one he's going to pick. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? So you have to make sure that you're as good as you could be every time he says action. And and that kind of desire for that for perfection is something that you don't see in network television, because they don't have the time, they don't have the money, and frankly, most of them don't have the ability.
Yeah, totally get it. Yeah, talking about Criminal Minds, Mindhunters. How much you were involved in serial killers before Mindhunter? You are a fan of the subject, or?
Yeah, but I was, surely, and and I had always been, very intrigued by, of course, the Manson family, I mean, who are really like a part of American folklore. And of course, and I was in New York, the summer that David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, was killing people, and and I saw the way that he had kind of brought the city to its knees. So I did have an interest, but boy, did I have to take a deep dive into that subject matter, when I signed on to Mindhunter, because it's a fascinating subject. There's so much to understand. There's so much to learn. And one of the benefits that I had was that I developed a friendship with the great criminal profiler, FBI detective John Douglas, who wrote Mindhunter. And John was always very generous with his time, and would always and invited me to his house, and would send me his files and get on the phone with me and answer any questions and stuff. And I always had questions. And So I learned a lot more about the subject while I was making the show than I had ever known before.
Wow, very interesting. Talking about that, I know that you have some help from FBI agents making some consulting for the show. But
Mhm.
did you make some research in your own about Robert Ressler and his work? Did you?
Yes, I did, but the one unfortunate thing was that Robert Ressler died in 2013.
Right.
And I can promise you, Professor Garcia, that if I had been alive, or if he had been alive, rather, I would have been knocking on his door so quickly, as before the ink was dry on my contract. Mr. Ressler, I'm gonna play a version of you or a character inspired by you, because one of the things that the writers did on Mindhunter that I thought was a very smart thing to do, while they remained very true to the details of the crimes and to the serial killers themselves, to the point where, the character, the actor playing Charles Manson, the actor playing David Berkowitz, these guys do a 6-hour prosthetic makeup before they show up on the set. So, I mean, they look, when 6 hours, with the same makeup artist who did Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill, for which he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, a brilliant prosthetic makeup team. And so walks through the door. I mean, he looks exactly like
Yeah.
like Berkowitz.
Yeah.
The actor Cameron Britton, who was nominated for, for really his first big role, as Ed Kemper, bears an uncanny resemblance, to the real Kemper. So this kind of attention to detail was always there when it came to the criminals and their crimes. But it was a little bit different with the FBI agents. So we're sort of inspired by Douglas and Ressler, but
Mhm.
but David wanted the writers to have the freedom. For example, the whole storyline involving my son, what I
Yeah.
mean? Who witnesses a murder. Well, that's based on a real story that from San Francisco in the 70s. But Robert Ressler did not have an adopted son. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot
Right.
of problems. That's something. But I think that it worked. I think that it was the way to go, because you wouldn't want to tell a true story and then get the details wrong when it comes to the crimes. That wouldn't be fair to the victims and their families. Do you know what I mean? That wouldn't be. But I think that it is justifiable to take more dramatic license when it comes to the FBI agents.
Okay. Yeah. I understand the artistic liberties that the script take about the characters of Ford and Tench, and I was amazed with the work you made with the serial killers. It was identical. The looks, the voice, the acting of the serial killers was perfect, and I think it was one of the more shocking features of the TV show. Well, uh,
Just to say one other thing about that, a lot
yeah,
of that comes down to our casting director. To find the right guy. I mean, think about Ed Kemper for a moment. Ed Kemper was a serial killer who was like 6'9", and gigantic, guy, what I mean? But he had to be very urbane and intelligent and look a particular way. It's a very difficult part to cast. A lot of those parts were very difficult parts to cast, and yet Lorraine Mayfield is her name. She saw hundreds of actors until finally the right guy walks through the door, and you go, he's the one. And it's not easy. And frankly, I think sometimes the people in that position don't always get as much credit as they deserve, because choosing the right guy for the right part is really half the battle.
yeah, it's an art
It's an
to
art,
to to
correct?
make the perfect cast. So you were talking about Bill Tench's son,
Yes.
and I think it's for me, and I think I talk for many of the fans, that it was one of the most intriguing parts in the show. Uh, I was very disappointed with the cancellation of the show, because one of the main points is I want to know what will happen with Bill's son.
Yes.
So uh, what do you think it's the dilemma confronts uh, looking at his own son that could be or not becoming a serial killer?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. It's a really interesting question because, I think that, you know, we talked about this a lot in rehearsal. Like, you know, obviously there's something that isn't talked about in the script, but obviously this couple, Bill Tench and his wife, are unable to have children. We're not sure why. Maybe it's a medical problem. Maybe it's her. Maybe it's me. We never really decided what, but the truth is we can't have children. And because of that, we decide to adopt. Who knows what kind of an emotional dynamic is created already? Because she's not capable of having a child. Maybe already there is a kind of an emotional burden that is present in the marriage, as a result of that. So we make a decision to adopt a son. I don't think Bill ever imagined that he would have an adopted son that had the kind of emotional and psychological problems that Brian exhibits. I think that he was the kind of old school guy, who imagined himself, with a baseball and throwing the ball to his little boy, and teaching him, how to stand in the batter's box, or and going for fishing trips, or something like that, like he did when he was a boy. And none of that with this child. And not only that, he couldn't seem to communicate with the boy. Right. The kid won't talk to me, and plus I'm busy, and I'm working. And, when we meet Bill for the first time, he's traveling a lot, right? He's teaching. He goes on the road and he teaches the latest FBI investigative techniques to local police officers in different parts of the country. And then he comes back and his wife is there and the son is there, and he's not sure how to be a father to the boy. And he feels awkward about it. And it feels as though this idea that they had to adopt a child to try to fix this problem, to try to do something, it didn't work. It didn't work. Instead, it was just many more problems. And then of course, he starts to show, very disturbing kinds of behavior. And Bill is really, really, really worried about it. But he is hesitant to express those worries to Nancy because of how deeply that could affect her. Do you see what I mean? It's so he's really in a quandary in that respect, and it's a conflict for him that he isn't sure how to resolve.
Thank you for this about the development of Bill and his relationship. And talking about this, in your own perspective, in your own mind, you think that the serial killer is made or is born? I know it's some kind of the egg of the chicken, who was first.
Right.
But your opinion about
Yeah,
these two.
it's such a great question, and obviously this is at the heart, really, of what our television show is exploring. I spend a lot of time with real agents, not only John Douglas, but there's a very, very smart detective named Greg wrote a wonderful book called The Unknown Darkness, and was a colleague of John's and of Robert Ressler, and worked with them in the behavioral science unit at which later became the behavioral analysis unit. And I used to hear this analogy all the time. And they would say, imagine that you're baking a cake and you put in all of the ingredients that you need to make a cake, eggs and the butter and the flour and the sugar and all of the things that are going to make a nice cake. But just as you're putting the cake into the oven, a little bit of motor oil spills into the batter. Now, when you take that cake out of the oven, can you get the motor oil out of the cake?
No.
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 So I think that these guys, they believe too much in rehabilitation. They feel as though, if a guy has committed these heinous crimes, and in certain cases, we're talking about just unimaginable cruelty, just a kind of like vicious depravity that is shocking sometimes, even to the men who make their lives, trying to catch these guys, of just incredible human cruelty. So they don't believe that guys can be rehabilitated, and I think they subscribe more to the kind of born bad apple kind of philosophy of that. I have to think that your upbringing, that your environment, plays an absolutely huge contributing factor. I was educated by Catholic priests. My family was Irish, and
I feel you.
Yeah.
I studied in Catholic schools too, so I completely understand.
Then you understand.
Yeah.
What I'm. The Jesuits used to say, "Give me a boy till he's 7, and I'll give you a Catholic for life," because they understood how formative those early years really are. And I think that look, in many cases we see the same kinds of things in the personal histories of these men, and they are mostly men. A cruel and domineering mother, an absent or alcoholic father, right? Violence in the home, often sexual abuse, these kind of things. They carry those scars with them, but it's still, it's still a fine line, because not every man who has thoughts, murder thoughts, is going to actually commit a murder.
Right.
And nobody wakes up at 35 years old having, I'm going to go out and commit a murder. It doesn't happen. There are warning signs along the way. It's increment way that these guys graduate to those kinds of crimes. They start small. Obviously, the famous ones we all know, are guys who are cruel to animals.
Animal cruelty.
Animal cruelty. It often starts in
crime, drug addictions.
Right. And maybe a guy starts with the sexual assault, and then the sexual assault becomes a rape, and then the rape becomes another rape, and eventually it becomes a rape murder. Do you see what I mean? And so, part of what disturbs Bill when it comes to his, it's not that he's, you know, convinced that the little boy is going to become a serial killer, but he's just seeing certain kinds of behavior that give him pause.
The warning signs.
That some of the early warnings, even in a boy that young, do you know what I mean? I'm seeing the reports from school that are, you know, about violent outbursts and about, you know, and his seeming lack of empathy and his inability to communicate. So, you know, but yeah, in answer to your question, nature versus nurture, you know, I think that you know, in a lot of cases, it can be a little bit of both, but I think that home environment, and I think those early years, I think it's just the importance of that, and the way that it forms the mind of the criminal, it just can't be overstated.
Yes, I'm agreeing with that too. What kind of character do you prefer? One based in a real life person or a fictional character? Which one you feel more comfortable or you like the most?
It's such a good question. I would put it a little bit differently. You know, there was a very famous writer in New York, who's unfortunately dead now. His name was Norman Mailer. And Norman Mailer was kind of like, you know, a latter day Ernest Hemingway, you know, kind of a tough guy, you know, but an intellectual, you know, and wrote a lot of very, very interesting, very successful books. Anyway, he used to say this thing. He used to say that there are only two ways that a man can present himself to the American public. You will either be some kind of a warrior, or you will be some kind of a lover. Every character that you ever play will be at bottom some variation on one of those two themes.
Wow.
I believe that. And you know, obviously, you know, I'm a guy who has, you know, more often played versions of the warriors in our society. But if you ask me what is my favorite kind of a part to play, it's a warrior who is capable of love, and it is his love for something that motivates him, and that could be the love of a woman, of course, but it's not confined to that. It could be the love of country, it could be the love of a particular cause or an idea, it could be the need or the desire to get to a particular, you know, destination, to accomplish a particular goal. Those are the characters that intrigue me the most, and they could be fictional, or they could be real life characters.
Right. So talking about this, do you prefer movie characters or TV characters?
Yeah, well, you know, look, you know, it's really changing. I mean, you know, when I first started off, I remember my first job, my first paid job as an actor in New York was in the Broadway production of Biloxi Blues. It was a play by Neil Simon, the great American playwright, comedy writer, Neil Simon. It won the Tony Award for Best Play. It became a movie. It starred Matthew Broderick, and I replaced an actor named Woody Harrelson. And of course, Woody Harrelson went on to be a big star, but he wasn't in those days. He was just a young guy like us. It was like one of his first jobs also. And he got this job on Cheers. Cheers was a television show, like a sitcom that was very popular, like in the 80s, going into the 90s, right? And, you know, there was such a stigma against, in those days, it was like if you were a serious actor, you could do theater also, Broadway, of course, you know, and then we do film, but we wouldn't do a sitcom on a television. It was considered, it's really changed a lot. And I remember when, because I took his job, so when he went off to do Cheers, that means I had a job, but because originally he was supposed to come back and take his job back. I was only there temporarily, and then he got Cheers. And I remember we would all sit around in the dressing room before the show, and we would be like, "Poor Woody, he ruined his career. He's not going to be able to do anything now." He went for the money. He took the sitcom. He could have been one greats. And now look, we were lamenting the demise of Woody Harrelson. What is the famous quote by Mark Twain? Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. It was very telling that, that idea, the way the business was already changing even back then.
Well, do you think was kind of a visionary at the time, or he did it for the money?
No, well, I think that Woody was, we have an expression in this country, some guys are a lot smarter than they look.
Right.
Woody Harrelson is one of those guys. He is a lot smarter than he looks, and I take my hat off to him because he's had a fabulous career and he's done wonderful work and been tremendously successful.
If you the magic lamp and the genie, and you have to ask only one wish, and this wish will be to perform your dream character, which will be your dream character to perform?
I'm in negotiations right now with the great Italian director Giuseppe Tornatore. Made a film called Cinema Paradiso, and Giuseppe Tornatore is considered one of the really extraordinary Italian directors of his generation. Like perhaps not quite, Federico Fellini, but he's like a tremendously important and successful director. He made a film that I love that was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture called The Star Maker. And and I'm in negotiations to try to obtain the English language remake rights. And it's about a guy who's a con man. It's set in Sicily, just after World War II. And if you recall, in World War II, Sicily was completely bombed, like back to the Stone Age. I mean, the whole country was like flattened. There's nothing, and the people were very poor and very desperate. And a guy comes to town who says that he's a movie producer. And he has contacts at Universal Studios in Roma. And if you just pay, a few hundred lira, I can give you a screen test. And you're going to get a screen test, and we're going to take your test to in Rome, and you might become a star. And and all of these people, they take the little money that they have, and they go to this guy, to these screen tests. And of course, half the time he doesn't even have film in the camera because, he's just a crook. And then something extraordinary happens to him, which is that, he falls in love with a girl from a small town who comes in to get the screen test, and it changes his life, and suddenly, it doesn't, he ends up going to prison. You know what I mean? I won't give you the whole story. It's a great movie. If you like Italian movies, I recommend it to anybody, The Star Maker. But anyway, that's the kind of like what I was describing before, a guy, who, is he's a particular kind of a man with a particular kind of a mentality, but suddenly, someone comes into his life and changes everything. And it's a very moving film in that way that Mr. Tornatore is famous for, evoking tremendous emotion from the audience. So we'll see. I mean, you asked me what I would like to do. That's something I would like to do next if I could put the deal together. It won't be easy.
Okay. So after you're telling us a little while ago, it's the part of a lover in this movie.
A reluctant
about
one.
the warrior or the lover.
Yeah.
It will be the lover.
Right. Yes. It checks all my boxes. As
Right.
we say. Right.
Okay. Talking about this, the warrior and the lover, a lot of your roles or yours are of tough guys in one way or another. How did you landed these roles? It was some kind of typecasting, do you think?
I think what it is like, again, my upbringing played a part. It's like, I had one of those tough Irish fathers, you know what I mean, who didn't allow, his sons to, to show emotions. You know what I mean? He was very, very strict and very, but
boys don't cry.
Yeah, exactly. But I grew up, really loving these particular actors in American cinema. Men like Steve McQueen and Robert Mitchum and Lee Marvin, right?
The Dirty Dozen.
And Chuck Bronson. And I grew up watching these men from the time I was a little boy. And, I decided when I was 6 years old that I was going to become an actor. My mother had a long friendship and had done a movie and a Broadway show with the wife of Steve McQueen. And when I was a boy, sometimes she would come, and visit my mom, and I remember on one occasion Steve was with her, and for me as a boy to see this guy, who was such a legend, and like the king of cool, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the king of cool, right?
The king of cool, man. It had a profound effect on me. So, I don't know if it's typecasting or if it's just. There were certain kinds of actors that I admired, certain kinds of actors that were my role models, and I was just kind of following in a tradition of male stars in American cinema.
You were telling us in the beginning of the interview that one of the most demanding roles, talking about training, was the one you did in Against the Ropes. But do you think this was your most challenging role, or what was your most challenging role in your film career?
Wow, it's such a good question. All the questions are good tonight. What was the most challenging? Well, I would say that there different roles are challenging for different reasons. Some of them might be challenging physically because of the, of the training and of the because they're very strenuous and very demanding. But others might be challenging, because it causes you to go to different places, emotionally that, that didn't expect, to go to. I remember, when I was shooting a Mindhunter and the famous scene between Bill Tench and Charles Manson.
Yeah.
And we shot that scene like for 3 days. I mean, it just went on and on and on, and so many takes and so much coverage. And the actor Damon Harriman, an Australian actor who played Manson, was absolutely superb. And the writers had kind of set up the scene as a confrontation, not just between a criminal and a cop, but a confrontation of two very different men with two very different philosophies of life, two very different views of the world. And this was really the source of the tension, between him. And as we filmed the scene, as we went on and longer and getting sort of deeper into it, I found myself going to places that I hadn't anticipated. It was really like a deep visceral anger, that I was having difficulty controlling. involuntary muscle spasms in my face and my neck.
Wow.
And my arm, just like, like I surprised myself sometimes. Do you know what I mean? It's like you sort of, you can go to another place. Acting can be a very interesting and very gratifying thing. Not, on certain occasions, you really do get to know things about yourself that maybe you hadn't really fully understood. Was it the great Greek philosopher Socrates who said, "Know thyself," right? Just two simple words: know thyself. However, for an actor, they are the most important words that you could ever hear, because the only things that you can offer to the characters that you play are the things that you have within you, right? The great American actor director Orson Welles to say that in each of us, a poet and a priest, an assassin and a revolutionary. You remove the things within yourself that don't correspond to the character that you want to create, and what you will be left with is the character. So it's always assessing things that are within you. The character is going to be a version of you. He might be, look, I'm very different than Bill Tench, but Bill Tench still represents a part of me. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So that happens sometimes, when the work is at a very high level, you find yourself discovering things about yourself that you never understood.
Right. And your vessel, right? It's, I don't know, maybe like a possession sometimes that the character took the control.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good way to put it.
Okay. Do you have a specific favorite genre that you like to play? I don't know, action, horror, suspense, thriller, or everything fits you?
A favorite genre? Yes. I think drama. Okay. The action movies, can be fun. You know what I mean? But it's very hard in an action film to find a script that has a tremendous amount of originality, because the stories have a tendency, you know what I mean, to follow, a certain structure.
Formula.
Right, a certain formula, exactly. But drama is my favorite. Look, I don't get offered too many comedies. I don't know why. My friends think I'm funny, but
my mom thinks I'm funny.
So I do a lot of drama, and when you're lucky, you get to be with the great directors, whether it's David Fincher or more recently Guillermo del Toro, Bradley Cooper, really superb, talented people.
Is there a director besides Tornatore that you tell us a while ago, that you want to perform for, or another or actress that you would like to work with?
Wow, that's another really good question. That's such a good question, such an interesting question. I'm trying to think of that, because I've really been very lucky when it comes to the directors that have chosen me. Not only David Fincher, but David O. Russell and William Friedkin and Clint Eastwood and Michael Mann and I just mentioned Guillermo del Toro, and
Mhm.
and Brian De Palma, and the list the list kind of goes on and on. I
No, 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 no. We're here. We're here.
right. You know, I mean, when I was a boy, my favorite film was a film called Stanley Kubrick, and
Hmm.
obviously, he's gone. Stanley's no longer with us, so I'm not going to get to work with him anytime soon. But I would love to work with Jack Nicholson one day. He doesn't work too much anymore.
Hmm.
I'd love to work with Gene Hackman. I
Hmm.
loved Gene Hackman.
Jim Hackman. You
This is
will
why I
love
just
to.
got this book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have to learn Spanish. So
Right.
yeah, so a girl that I know in Madrid, she sent me this book, and she said, because I speak very good French, but I wish
Wow.
that my Spanish was better, and I'm gonna learn it. So if we do another interview in a year or so, I try to do some of it in Spanish if I.
I'd be glad to help you with your Spanish anytime.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. When I was in Mexico City, I think I told you this, maybe in the video, but I did a Mexico City. It was called Vantage Point, and
Vantage point, right?
right, and like Dennis Quaid and William Hurt, and he's the president, and we're like guarding the president, and then there's a terrorist attack. But I really fell in love with Mexico City. I was staying in Polanco at a beautiful hotel called the Camino Real.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And we had this beautiful, beautiful rooms. It was just such a great hotel. And there was a woman who was a friend of mine who lived
Uh-huh.
in Los Angeles, and
Hmm.
she was from a place south of Mexico City, Distrito Federal. Is that what it's called?
Uh-huh.
You know,
Distrito
uh,
Federal. Yeah.
Distrito Federal, and
Hmm.
she had not been able to go back to see her family for a
Hmm.
number of years because she didn't have the right papers, and
Hmm.
so she said to me, if you're going to Mexico City, will you take some gifts to my family? I said,
Wow.
of course, I'd be happy to, and the next day, house, and she had like big boxes, you know what I mean? She had like a lot of gifts. But I took them to the airport, and I got them on the plane, and I got them in my room, but my Spanish wasn't good, and I knew that her family didn't speak English. So I met this young Mexican screenwriter, and he said, "Listen, I'm gonna translate for you. I have a car, so we'll put the boxes in my car, and then I'll drive you there, and then we can have lunch with them." And they offered to have us for lunch. They were from Oaxaca originally.
Yeah.
They made beautiful, Mexican food with the mole and
Yeah.
you know,
The gastronomy of Oaxaca, it's impressive.
it's impressive, yeah. And and the old man, I bought him like a very expensive bottle of tequila, and then he told me
Hmm.
that he doesn't drink. But oh, okay, well, sorry about that. But anyway, what happened was, the word got out, that the gringo, took some gifts for the family, and so I started getting all of these invitations, to the opening of a new film, and here's a new restaurant, and the parties, and all San Daniel, and come to this place, and come, and and Mexico City kind of blossomed for me. And
Right.
when I first arrived, in Mexico City, because I didn't speak Spanish, and because I didn't know the city, and it's a very big city, and a lot of people, and a lot of traffic, and I felt kind of lost. And I was there for 3 months. Um, I was trying to make up excuses to stay longer. You know, producers would say, you know, I think we're going to let you go home next week. And I'd say, no, 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 no. You remember that one shot that we were supposed to get when I'm in the truck and you never got that shot? I'll stay. Don't worry. We get it. We, you know, until finally they said, no, 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 you have to go home now. But I really, I love the city, and I hope I'm going to get to come back one day soon.
You will be very welcome anytime, and I could be your personal guy.
Well, I promise you this, Professor Garcia. If I come to Mexico City, I will absolutely get in touch, and we'll go together for some Oaxacan food.
Well, we're important. We have a hacker here, so. Anyway, you were talking a while ago about directors and actors, and are you thinking in the near future to become a director or screenwriter?
I am, and I actually I had written a script, it's an outline for a limited series about a very famous boxing trainer named Teddy Atlas, who was Mike Tyson's first trainer. You know, he trained Michael Moorer when Moorer was heavyweight champion. Trained 20 different, world champion boxers. And I sent the material to David Fincher, and I said, David, this is something I'm intending to direct. What do you think? And he wrote back to me, and he said, I think it's very good. And I think that the most interesting thing for me is that you want to direct it. I think it's that gave me tremendous confidence, because, there are no better directors than David Fincher. And so for him to tell me that he thinks that I would do a good job, it really meant a lot to me.
Yeah. Getting that kind of encouragement from an important director like David Fincher is like a good start, right? It's like getting called again from the director.
That's exactly how I felt.
Professor Garcia, it's Holt. Listen, I just wanted to say thank you for our interview. I'm sorry we got rudely interrupted, but I enjoyed our conversation. And thank you for doing so much research into my work and my career. I had not expected that. It was very gracious of you. So thank you. Thanks to all the fans. And I hope we get to meet one day in Mexico City.